Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Zack Wenthe. Zack is the Customer Data Platform Evangelist for Treasure Data. He often speaks about the marketing and customer data industry at industry events, webinars, and virtual conferences. Having spent a majority of his career in marketing and marketing consulting working with large enterprise brands like Walmart, Nationwide Insurance, FedEx, and many more, Zack now gets to tell the CDP story to help marketing teams eliminate the friction caused by silos, inefficiencies, and lack of understanding of their true customers. Zack lives with his amazing wife and 2 kids on the bluffs of the Mississippi River and has one more who is away at college. Outside of work, Zack enjoys cooking, spending time with his kids, writing comedy, and maybe someday a screenplay. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Zack. Welcome, Zack.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, Zack. So even though we read a little bit about you, a little bit of professional, a little bit of personal, we still like to ask our guests in their own words if they could share about their journey, how it is that they got to where they are today. Could you do that for me, please?
Yeah, it was I would say it's a long, winding road to how I got to kind of my career. And I went to college thinking I was going into theater. And yet somehow I ended up in marketing. But when you think about it, marketing is a lot of theater. So I started in college, realized I wasn't gonna make any money, if I went in the theater route, and kind of wandered around for a bit and kind of landed into the marketing space. Ran teams for a while before I made the jump into the consulting world. And most of my consulting career was tied to MarTech. I was enough of a nerd that I was a marketing technologist before that was, like a title or a thing. And I could kind of translate. I could tell the marketing story to the tech people, and then I could translate the technical requirements and limitations back to the marketing team, and we could kind of work through the details. So I spent a lot of my career as a strategist, doing implementations and family. It got to be a lot to be, with a client every week. So I kind of made the jump over to the product world, and I sit now as you said, as the CDP evangelist. So I get to kind of talk about our product, and I talk to marketers that I've worked with for my entire career and kind of understand their pain points. And so I get to kind of come and talk to, businesses owners, and so that's how I ended up here.
Awesome. So you work at a company called Treasure Data. And for those of our listeners that's not familiar with your organization, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yep. So Treasure Data is an enterprise customer data platform. And what that means is we work with, with typically complex organizations who are trying to bring all of their customer profile, transactional, behavioral data together into a single location. So you may have email systems and e-commerce systems and physical point of sale systems and all these different things that have fragments of the individual, kind of scattered within these different systems. And so the goal of a CDP or a customer data platform is to bring all of those profiles together. So we're looking at a single kind of 360-degree view of that customer, and therefore we can create better customer experiences. We can create better connection, emotional connection with our customers, so that we're not having these, well, I called into the call center and they don't even know that I made a purchase kind of experiences, which unfortunately happen way too often. So,
Right.
So that's the pain we solve.
So let me give an example. Let's say, for example, I go to my doctor, right? And the week before, I had gone to a different doctor and I did a blood test. And then the week before that, I did a mammogram. And so is it that your platform allows this doctor to see all of this medical data merged into one space that they can look holistically at the person?
Yeah. So with obviously with privacy and consent, kind of in place. So assuming that the that medical assistant was sharing the information and you had consented to that, absolutely. It would bring all of that profile together and make it available to the electronic medical record in that case, or to a scheduling, when you called in later now and you have to schedule an appointment, they'd be able to see that, oh, by the way, you were in here a week ago and you prefer this location, so now we're
Right.
not going to send you to one 20 miles away from you. So all of those little details, and it works across retail, travel and hospitality, B2B, medical, absolutely all those scenarios.
Great. So share with our listeners for me, Zach, based on your experience and your knowledge in this particular area, what are some of, I would say, maybe three of the top pain points that utilizing this methodology helps with customers' overall experience with a brand?
So I would say the top three, or the number one that we think about, is this idea of the fractured individual.
Mm-hmm.
So at any given time, when I'm a consumer and I'm dealing with a company, I'm not dealing with a department. I don't care whether you're the online team or you're the marketing team, whether you're the email team, whatever variation of that departmental hierarchy you are. I just deal with the brand as the consumer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, corporations don't typically operate that way. We have structure and teams and silos, and so what ends up happening is you end up with this fractured view of an individual, and it's frustrating from the consumer's perspective, because now one day they're talking to they're physically in a store and they're shopping and they're talking to somebody in that's under one team and one data system, but again later on they're online and it's a whole other system, and we recently just had a new customer, who joined us, and this is the exact scenario that they were trying to solve. They said, look, we're a high-end jewelry retailer, and during the pandemic, 80% of our people were shopping online. They were buying and spending large amounts of money, and it's not acceptable for them to walk into our store and talk to a salesperson, and the salesperson have no idea who they are, no idea about their past purchases. That's not the experience we want to create.
Mm-hmm.
And so by democratizing or making all of this data available, we eliminate that friction, or that kind of pain point of dealing with the customer. So that's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
The second two are kind of offshoots of that. Is once you've solved that major problem, then now you can start to have conversations amongst multiple teams, because you're all working on the same set of data. So no longer are you arguing over, when the last customer visited based on which system is in charge. It's all combined, right? And so you're able to have a conversation. You don't go to a board meeting and hope your data is correct, because you're working on a unified set of truth. So your analytics, your insights, all of the reporting is better. And then the last one is, now we also break down the access to data, right? So a lot of times with silos, the challenge becomes, if you're in the marketing team, you're going to have to go to somebody in IT. They're going to have to pull a report for you. They're going to have to go in, and it's going to take a couple weeks. We make it easier and faster for all these teams to access this information, so that they can move faster and they can move more nimbly. So break down so the three really is access to the total customer to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can trust the data, and then you can move nimbly and interact with the customer as a result of that.
All right. Awesome. So data is king, right? And as we've emerged out of the pandemic, and now we have all of these wonderful AI tools. Now we have ChatGPT. I would love to know your views, since you're in the data world, in terms of how do you think ChatGPT can help organizations? I mean, there's a lot of chatter about ChatGPT replacing people, but I personally don't believe that any technology is going to replace a human being. But I would love to hear your views, since, this is an area that you operate in on a day-to-day basis across different industries. How do you see this helping or not helping the overall service experience?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I think, ChatGPT allows us to access more information faster, but really that's never been the problem, right? Really, it's never been an issue. There's no shortage of information or data, and it's never going to get less, right? The problem now still lies in organizing it, accessing it, and trusting it. And so I think as these models, whether it's OpenAI's, ChatGPT or any variation of that, or some of the other competitors, I think as they mature and you start to see, I think the biggest issue with the plugins, where you can start to bring in information. So not only can you ask your assistant, your AI assistant, hey, help me plan a trip to Mexico. I want to stay in an all inclusive resort with this weather, and they're like, oh yeah, here's some options. Well, that's historical information. But now when you pull in a plugin, for example, and it can real time access travel, it can access weather patterns, it can access all this other information. Now that becomes useful, right? And now it becomes a matter of indexing and organizing and making that data accessible. And so I think that's where I get excited, especially from personally just being able to speed up a lot of the mundane things we do on a day-to-day basis as a consumer, but also as a business. We are going to be, customer data platforms are going to be a source for a lot of those AI systems. If I know everything you've purchased from us, and I know everything based on that, what other customers have purchased, all this other information, and I can feed it into an AI system, and you go shopping and you can say, hey, pick out my summer wardrobe. And the AI system can make recommendations based on what you like, what you don't like. And it's super personalized to you, because it's not just looking at what you bought maybe at this store, but because the AI is tied into other stores, it looks at what you buy at other stores, what shoes you have, what how you tend to use those clothing items, right? Do you travel? Do you speak? I don't know, all these ideas, but the idea is, by being able to really personalize at a level we've never been able to get to because of just resource scales, I think that's where AI gets really interesting. Nice. Will it replace people? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to become a skill, much like Googling is, right? You have to know how to Google to get through your day. True. I think interacting with AI is going to be a very similar scenario.
That's interesting. Like, learn to Google, learn to chat GPT. That kind of leads to my next question, as it relates to creating emotional connection. And I think it's important to recognize that, all customers are human beings and everybody has their personal preference. And personalization has been one of those buzzwords for quite a few years now. But as you mentioned before, we haven't really been able to get to that level of granular, specification with, customer to customer. That I don't just feel like I'm a transaction or just another person, but I feel like this was for me, only me, nobody else in the world but me. So can you share with us, how you think that will help to deepen brand loyalty and, of course, improve overall customer experience?
Yeah. So, when it comes to improving the customer experience or and brand loyalty, right? At this point, being loyal to a brand is often not enough, right? We all think about all the loyalty programs we're all members of. The average household has 20 plus loyalty cards, if not more.
That's true.
It doesn't make you loyal. It just means you've kind of learned to operate within that mode. I think really what it comes down to is the level, which is the next level, which is brand attachment. Are you attached to that brand? And are you happy when you interact with them? And would you be sad if they weren't around, right? And that's a level that a lot of brands still don't operate at. And there's obviously degrees of that within different industries and different verticals, but if you think about it in that light or in that lens, people came out of the pandemic who were very loyal to brands and then couldn't shop in them anymore, so they found an alternative. They learned to shop online. And they're like, oh my gosh, this was super easy. People who were scared of e-commerce aren't scared of e-commerce anymore. They have groceries delivered to their door. I mean, all of these we all went through a massive shift in our buying behavior as a result of the pandemic. But I think it's not just a result of that. We just accelerated what was already happening. And so we're in this world now where the consumer's in charge. They get to pick what they want, and brands have to keep up. Right? They're not in the driver's seat. It's no longer, here's my experience, and if you want to do business with me, you have to bend to my will. Consumers are now saying, hey, this is how I expect to be treated. The brands I want to deal with, and we're being a lot more forceful as consumers in making those decisions, in breaking up with the ones that we don't like, and so forth. So that means now, as we get to the personalization side, personalization has to evolve. We can't just geo target advertising to people, or target based on, well, you bought this in the past, you're going to buy this in the future. There's a whole other level below that, which when we get into the idea of that creating those emotional connections, creating those, tying into as individuals, as people, whether that's through personalization, whether that's through AI, whether that's through new ways of creating ads, we can create content at scale that we've never been able to. So now I can serve you if I know you're an introvert and I'm a travel company, I can serve you out ads or content that shows people sitting on the beach reading, right? That's more appealing to you. That seems like, oh, that's vacation.
Yeah.
Versus if you're an extrovert, being able to show, people, a group of people hanging out on the beach, socializing, right? And for the introvert, that's exhausting. For the extrovert, that's exciting. And so, and that's a really simple example, but if you think about that, before you'd have to create all that content, you'd have to write all that. Well, AI can do all of that now, right? You can generate those images and you can process it, and it's only the beginning. It's only going to get better, faster, easier, cheaper to do.
Yeah. It's amazing the amount of things that, AI has allowed. And just, when I look across the different platforms that I use, and I get these emails, on a weekly basis about the platforms integrating AI into their existing solution, making it easier for the consumer. And as you mentioned before, things that would have taken, 10 hours, a whole month to do 5 years ago can literally be done in like 5 minutes or less.
Absolutely. It's and I think we're just scratching the surface. I think right now it's still in a lot of ways a gimmick, because I think people are just trying to figure out what is that killer use case for my business for AI, and so let's try something. And so much like we had when 20 years ago when people started creating websites, right? Everybody kind of jumped online and then they figured out what worked. And then same thing 10 plus years ago with social media, right? It was like, everybody needed a social media platform. And then you're like, no, I just need a page. Okay, but this is what this page means. And then it became Instagram. Then it became short. I mean, AI is going to be the same thing. We're going to have this kind of wave as we figure it out.
Agreed. One of the things I loved about what you said earlier, when we just started talking about the emotional connection, was brand attachment. And if you think about a brand that you can't live without, like if they were no longer in existence, how would you operate? Would you be able to find a substitute? And when you said that, what came to mind was my Apple ecosystem, right? So I'm just like, I don't see any other product out there that moves so smoothly and easily. And honestly, if there was no Apple, I don't know if there would be a substitute. I feel I would find a substitute, of course, but I wouldn't be satisfied, because they wouldn't,
right.
If they're not offering what Apple is offering, then it would mean that they're not meeting my expectations, because Apple has set the bar so high.
Absolutely. And we all have those. And I'm 100% on board with the Apple ecosystem as well. That would be my challenge. And, and there's probably 5 or 6 other brands in your life that if you had to replace them, you would, but you'd be frustrated by it. You'd be sad by it. You'd be, upset. And I think that's the level that we as companies need to, kind of like strive for now. Now it's not just, are they loyal? Do they buy from us, repeatedly, but do they want to buy from us repeatedly?
Yeah. Very true. Because want and need are 2 different things, right?
Absolutely.
All right, Zach, could you share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
That's a good question. I'm a huge, I do a ton of research and writing and notes. And so, and I'll give you 2. So I have both Evernote and Notion as my kind of second brain for collecting and managing information. And so I would say if you're still, I love notebooks. I love writing in Moleskine notebooks, but I lose them or I forget what I wrote down in one, and then it sits somewhere in a desk drawer. So getting it into a digital system was a huge change in how I personally operate,
Mm-hmm.
how I manage my workload. So Notion is probably my number one recommendation right now. And it's
Oh,
integrated with AI. So look, see, you can be on the cutting edge because you can use AI right within it to summarize notes and do to-do lists and all sorts of cool things.
wow. All right. So we have Notion. So we'll have the link for that application in the show notes of this episode. Could you also share with our listeners, Zach, maybe one or two books that you've read? Could be a book you read recently or even one you read a very long time ago, but it still has had a great impact on you.
So I would say, I've got a couple here, and I have some a couple different ones. So I would say anything. I've always been a huge fan of Malcolm Gladwell. So Tipping Point, anything by Malcolm Gladwell is um, uh, a good one. But when we're thinking and we're talking about um, uh, we're talking about personalization and we're talking about psychology, a book that actually came from a recommendation by Malcolm Gladwell. He made it a comment in one of his books, but I went and found the source. There is it's a textbook. So this is my nerd side coming out here. So, but it's called The Person and the Situation, and it's like perspectives on kind of social psychology. And since I'm a marketer, social psychology is a huge interest area for me. And the thesis of this book really comes down to the idea is how much does the situation that we're in influence the way we behave versus the person and the personality, right? So in other words, all things being equal, does the person behave the same regardless of situation, or does the situation really drive? And I think a lot of times when we think of personalization and when we think persuasion and we think writing copy and all these things, we focus on the person. We spend too little time focusing on the situation that they're in. And so this was definitely a kind of a deep dive into social psychology on how much the environment around you can impact how you behave, how you interact, and how you respond to stimuli.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point because I think the environment definitely affects you. I mean, let's say you're buying, something in relation to a plumbing issue that you're having at your home, but there's an emergency. Clearly, the urgency of purchase is going to be much greater just based on the environment and what's happening and the situation versus you just randomly walking into the store and making that purchase.
Absolutely. Yep.
Brilliant. All right. What was the name of that book? Could you remind us?
It is the situation. No, the person and the situation.
The person and the situation. Great. So we'll have a link to that book in the show notes of this episode. I think I might grab a copy myself. All right. Could you share also with our listeners, Zach, what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you are really excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Yeah. So I am in the process. So I'm writing a book. I've been working on a book for a while. So a lot of my job and my career has always been centered around storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And about 3 years ago, I sat down and I said, I keep talking about that, but what the heck do I mean by storytelling in business? And so I started just kind of pulling all of these notes together, and then I started diving into the research and pulling a lot of things out. And so that's been what I've been working on furiously for the last 6 months or so is getting that manuscript done.
Mm-hmm.
And whatnot. It's been amazing because I think the art of writing is one of those things that every marketer, every business owner should dedicate time to writing. So even if you're not going to write a book, sitting down and taking the thoughts that are in your head and distilling them so that somebody else can learn them is an incredible way to not only teach yourself, but to refine your thinking and realize where you might have a gap or where you might need to, explain better.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if you're not going to write a book, I would say anybody should pick up a pen, grab a keyboard, and start writing about your passion area or your interest area, because you will unlock a lot of things about yourself when you're staring at a blank screen and you're trying to get words out of your head.
Ah, true. Very true. Awesome. So I'm excited about your book. I hope that when it's released, we can have you back on our podcast to discuss all the exciting buzz coming out of that book.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Zach, our listeners would have tapped into this episode and they're quite intrigued with what you're doing, all of the conversations that we've had, your organization, Treasure Data, and they would like to connect with you online. How can they reach you online?
Yeah, absolutely. So treasuredata.com is the company website. You can hop on, learn a little bit more about us if you're interested from a company perspective. Personally, you can find me on LinkedIn. Zack Wenthe, ZackWenthe. Connect with me, send me a message. I do occasionally post on Twitter and TikTok and whatnot, but I think LinkedIn is a fast and easy way. So yeah, I love any and all connections.
Awesome. So we'll have the links to getting in touch with Zach and his organization in the show notes of our episode to make it easier for our listeners. Now, before we wrap our episodes up, Zach, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? If for any reason at all you get derailed or sidetracked and you kind of just need that quote to get you back on target, back on track. Do you have one of those?
That's a tough question. I have a lot of concepts and stories and notes, and I think one that drives me as a marketer, and one that drives me and personally I use it often. It's actually, there's a jazz performer. His name is Art Blakey, and he had a quote. And it was simply, if you're not appearing, you're disappearing. And so I think I kind of apply that in a lot of different ways. From a marketing perspective, if you're not showing up in front of your audience, they're going to forget you. You're going to fade away. He obviously was talking about it from a performance perspective. As a performer, if you're not up in front of the audience, you're losing that connection. But I think it applies to our personal lives as well. If you're not showing up and you're not bringing your authentic self, then you lose those connections. Out of sight, out of mind is such an easy default for so many people. So I think, to me, that's one that I always kind of go back to, which is, just show up, be present and be out there.
Amazing. All right. So if you're not appearing, you are disappearing, correct?
Yes.
I love that. I love that quote. That is brilliant. All right. So thank you so much, Zach. I really enjoyed our conversation. Like, I wish I could talk with you for another 30 minutes. But we have to wrap it up. It was a great conversation. I look forward to having you back on our guest. Please tell your booking agent to give us back a call when your book is out. Your energy, your vibe, all the the conversation that we had, it was just really, really good synergy. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I will absolutely come back.
All right. Want to remind our listeners, if they'd like to join our private Facebook group, it's Navigating the Customer Experience Community. And please feel free to follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience webinar will be hosted on Wednesday, July 26, 2023 at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This webinar will be provided with a complimentary copy of the ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience book. Who should attend? Customer service representatives, customer care officers, customer service associates, support agents, business development officers, customer care representatives, cashiers, receptionists, sales and service representatives, customer retention agents, client support specialists, customer engagement officers, client care coordinators, reservation specialists, reservations agents, collections officers, client relationship officers, administrators, account executives. If you deal with customers daily and you are seeking reinforcement of the skills needed to offer an exceptional experience, then this webinar is for you. This webinar will cover managing customer expectations. What are the 4 things customer expectations are based on? Customer service skills. What are the skills and competencies required to serve others? Handling irate and difficult customers. How to handle difficult and irate customers in a busy work environment. Your attitude, communication, finding solutions, and rapid response. Tools that you will need to help you exceed your customers' expectations. This webinar will help you ignite your customer service skills, navigate your emotions, and better understand how to serve customers during a time when the customer is even more demanding than before. Your business will see the exponential rewards when your team members are continually creating fantastic and memorable experiences for your customers. Please visit the register here on our podcast show notes page, and please feel free to hop on over to Instagram. You can visit our business page, Customer Service Global, that's CUSTOMERGLOBA, or you can visit Yannick W.A. Grant, that's YANIQUEWAGRANT. Both Instagram handles will have the link for you to register for this amazing webinar. We look forward to seeing you there. Please come and bring all your friends and colleagues.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.